when I did my first race, and before I was just like, I was nearly vomiting. I was backwards and forwards to the toilet, like just terrified, and just thinking like, what have I signed up to?
So, welcome to the Confidence Credentials couch, Chris and Nicholas.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the invite.
No problem at all. I'm really looking forward to speaking to you today. Got so many things to talk through. Massive change in career. The two businesses that you've set up. Triathlete, Iceguys sea dipping, which I need to get along to much more than I have done. Definitely a fair weather sea dipper.
It's been noted.
Yeah, I know it has. I know numerous times. But first of all, the question that we ask every guest on the couch: what does confidence mean to you?
For me, and it was when you first asked us to come on, you first told us what the podcast was going to be about. I thought, it was like, oh, well, that's simple enough. Confidence is about like feeling good, looking good, like but the more I thought about it, because I've had like a good few weeks to think about it, the more it was like, it became a much more complicated thing in my mind, and a much more interesting thing to think about, and like about confidence and what confidence is to me personally. At the top of the list, I think for me, or I know for me, that confidence is feeling comfortable in myself. Following on from that, nothing particularly is going to dent my confidence overall. And that doesn't mean I've got like bulletproof confidence that doesn't go up and down. I've got some things to discuss. One from very recently that dented my confidence massively, and I had to do a bit of process and spoke to a few people about it. But overall, if I feel comfortable with myself, and I do more so now than I ever have in my life. I'm like 46 now. And from teenage years, issues, my 20s were a bit of a mess. 30s and 40s have been about like working on myself, and it's been a long-term, very, very long-term project, so to speak, and a lot of work on myself. But I feel like I'm at a point in my life now where I'm comfortable with myself, so I'm confident in myself, if that makes sense. And then things that I try, like you've mentioned, me career change, I'm a lot more likely to do new things, try new things, big things. That was probably the biggest thing I've gone through for a long time, was the career change. And I'm a lot more comfortable in myself to do that, and that's where my confidence comes from. So being comfortable in yourself, I think, is where my confidence comes from.
Okay. Can I just ask a question about that? Because that phrase, it resonates with me. And it does with so many people that I talk to, whatever the goal is, it often comes back to, I just want to feel that. What does that mean to you?
Well, the long story is that when I was, it means like being able to not worry about going out and doing normal things. And I've gone through a lot of things where it was a lot of effort, just do normal things. To explain, to give the full story, because I'm here to give the full story. When I was younger, when I was a teenager, I had bad acne. So I had bad skin. So as a teenager, young lad, you're growing through your teens. It's a tough enough time for most young lads anyway, and everybody has their like ups and downs then. But added on to that, I had bad skin, and it just made us feel like ultra self-conscious about how I looked and how my skin looked. Tried all kinds of things like the Oxy-10, I don't know if you remember all that kind of thing, the over-the-counter stuff that just didn't do anything, didn't touch the sides. So there was a lot of issues there, and then from that being self-conscious about the way I looked, then overflowed into like confidence with like the opposite sex and things like that. So there was a lot of like issues there. Even though like the people that made comments, and this is something that I thought about after you had asked us to come on this podcast, like the only people that ever made comments were people who were my friends. And that used to hurt a lot. But when I started thinking about the confidence part of it, and then I started thinking back to that particular time, I'm now like, it doesn't bother us anymore that they used to say to me, because I think, well, that person is still my friend now. They're still my friend. I still know them. I would see them in the street. And like, they never said that to like hurt us. It was just lads having a bit daft crack. I used to say things to people, and so it was just crack. So I've looked at it in a different perspective on that little thing. That's something I've never thought about for years, maybe 20 years almost, possibly, that I've never thought about them things that people used to say. But I've reframed that. But my confidence issues, which then led to issues I had in my 20s, it came from having bad acne. And having bad acne, it would be like just going out and being around people was sometimes difficult because I was so self-conscious about how I looked. And so it was a lot of effort to go and do things, because in the back of my mind it was always like, your skin looks bad. And it got to the point where I would be telling myself, you look disgusting. That's how bad it got. But I never got bullied. I never got like picked on. And it was never a thing every day where someone would say something every day. I'd be like, oh God, someone's going to say something. Because at the same time as being very self-conscious and my self-esteem was really low, I was and I am quite an outgoing person, quite sociable. So there was two like opposites almost battling together, like me outgoing part of us and me social, so like really like socialising, chatting to people, being around people, was battling against the other side, where it was like, you look disgusting, don't be around people. So it was like, it was so up and down. And obviously as a teenager, like you haven't got the knowledge and the tools to deal with that. I wouldn't have spoken to anybody, I didn't speak to anybody about it. Nowadays there might be a little bit more awareness around where to go for help and everything else, but for a long time I just muddied on really. But as time went on, and as I got a little bit older, I went to the GP, plucked up the courage to go and speak to the GP and ask for like, is there any medication? And then had to go through different medications, which didn't work. So that was really denting me confidence, because that first day, the doctor was like, oh yeah, there's lots we can try. So at that point I was thinking, class, in about 6 months' time I'm going to have beautiful, flawless skin and everything's going to be all right. The reality was I had to go through about 4 different medications, and every time they didn't work. I got the side effects, still had that acne, tried something else, and then the last medication that, I don't know if they still do, but the last medication they give you is something called Roaccutane. That's really strong. And the side effects can be horrendous, and I dealt with some pretty rough side effects from Roaccutane, but it's almost nailed on guaranteed to clear your skin. So I went on that, and I can remember at the time as well, there was a lot of publicity around it in America, because there was kids committing suicide because they'd gone on Roaccutane, because the side effects are like anger issues and depression and anxiety, and my mum knew this as well. My dad was a little more reserved in what he was talking about, but when I mentioned Roaccutane, my mum just blew up. She was like, you're not going on that, you can't go on that. And I was like, I've got to. I really need to go on this. And I went on it, and there was like dry, flaky skin. You had to use a really simple wash, and it was dead dry. My skin was like dry, and I could feel it drying up, because I think what it does, it reduces the oil that then produces the spots. So it dries your skin out, but it wasn't just my facial skin. It was like on my hands and everything. So I was working at Royal Mail Parcel Force then. I think like moisturiser in, putting moisturiser on, and that was like, then that was affecting my self-esteem, because I was like, I've got horrible hands, and I just felt really down, and I did feel like I felt depressed. I was a lot quicker to be angry, but I didn't want to show it to people in case then that got to my mum. I definitely didn't want to show it. I'm still living at my parents', and I definitely didn't want to show it to my mum, because she would have just been on it as to stop it. So I had to internalise all that, and that's, as everybody knows now, that's not a healthy thing to do. Mm-hmm. So I had to keep that down. So that was a good 6 months of being on Roaccutane. I think it was. That's how I remember it. Anyway, it might have been shorter.
And what age was that?
I was 19, 20 when I was on that.
I mean, that's such a key age, isn't it? For, you mentioned like the lads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You're going out, there's, like dating, there's everything that goes with it, whether it's sports, whether it's going to work. I mean, it impacts on every area.
All of it.
Your confidence at that age as well, which is a real tricky age. So were you still going out? Or did it limit you in terms of what you were doing socially?
It didn't. I'm not going to pretend that I hid away, and I certainly I never got to the point where I like wanted to like harm myself. I was never like suicidal. It never got that bad, but it was always a battle to go out. It was always like through the week, like if somebody would like mention it, because like just before mobile phones and that, and if we were playing football, like five-a-side football on a Wednesday night, we used to, the lads would be like, right, Friday night, Saturday night, we're going out, and I'd always be straight away, I'll be out, but in my mind I was like, oh shit, you know, for an hour before going out, you're going to be getting ready and you're going to be looking at your skin. Shit. So what I was doing was having a couple of beers before going out. But that couple of beers before going out, it never flicked in my mind until a lot later, and we'll get on to what happened a lot later. I was having a couple of beers and I was like settling down, but it was never like, I'll have to have a couple of beers and that'll settle us down and that'll calm us down. It was just, subconsciously, I wasn't even, I was like medicating the anxiety, but not quite realising I was medicating the anxiety, because having a few drinks before you get out is just a part of getting out. So many people do that, but they're just doing it because they like having a couple of drinks. Subconsciously, I was doing it because it calmed us down enough to actually step out the door and then get out.
We've already spoke about this on a previous podcast, and I've spoke about it a lot as well with my own challenges with alcohol before I'd quit for those 3 years, and I get that from a confidence point of view. I mean, I would say probably very much like yourself at that age, I was really confident, but I definitely needed those couple of drinks beforehand to go out. But we all know what kind of happens after that, because it's them few drinks before you go out. It's a skin full of foods, and then it's like the lows that come from it as well.
Isn't this part of the thing though, the challenge that, because you mentioned you didn't really know how to cope with it, you had to learn that later on in life, but like whoever taught us, that you're going to feel nervous, you're going to feel these feelings, especially as blokes. I mean, you don't talk about feelings, do you?
No,
right.
Not there. I mean,
so knocking back a couple of beers is the way to do it, but there's lots of other tools, but just never taught that sort of stuff.
I don't think at that age, whether that's part of the curriculum these days at schools or not, but it kind of, do you know what, if you look then, that's where you really need to start working on that, to say, look, these are the feelings that you're going to have. I mean, maybe sex education is still a thing at school, but do you know what, equally as important is how to cope and coping mechanisms, especially with confidence going forward. Because there's a difference, isn't there, between like lads banter. I mean, we've kind of all been there and probably all still get it now and everything. But, there's no real at that earlier age to say this is how you need to really deal with stuff. Your late teens, your early 20s. No. And then even into your 30s, to be honest, where my problems will start to like really creep through. So how did you find from there, sort of you're 19, you're going into your mid 20s, still not feeling ultra confident? Kind of what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was a continuation really. It was like life carried on. I was enjoying my work, was enjoying going out, but again that was because the booze was like creating that sort of calm to help us go out. And then like early 20s, I remember taking speed for the first time, and that was like, woof, this is even better than alcohol. And then started going clubbing, started taking A's, started taking coke, and then we're like, at first, again, I wasn't like quite understanding that the drink and the drugs were masking that. I'd stopped. I knew, looking back, I knew that I'd stopped thinking about how I looked, but that was because, for the most part, I was like looking forward to the weekend when I could take drugs and drink and everything else, and it was slightly out of my mind. It was always there beforehand, but I kind of knew there's some relief at the weekend, and then carried on, and it got to the point, like it was kind of getting worse without us even realise it was getting worse, because I was thinking, like, instead of having a couple of beers before, I'm going to take, because when I took ecstasy, that was a completely different level of comfort in myself and feeling confident and comfortable with myself, to having a few beers. because having a few beers, I would always get messed up by the end of the night. But if I took like pills and coke, I was kind of, or I thought I was, I probably wasn't, but I didn't feel as like screwed by the end of the night, or I wasn't drunk, I wasn't falling all over the place. So I started, instead of having a couple of beers, I would take half an E. And then it was only in therapy where it was kind of explained that my anxiety levels by that time, especially once I got into like E and coke, were like sky high. So, or possibly a better example is like down here. So I'm operating down here, but normal levels here. But taking half an E would get us there. So to feel normal, I was taking ecstasy. And then from there, I was just going up, and then through the night or across the weekend, it would just end up like off into the stratosphere. Coke was the thing, I think, that really deeply affected us and put us into the problems that I had. Like between 25 and 27, I really struggle to remember stuff that I did. If somebody explained stuff, it's like, I cannot remember, like, did we do that? Did we play football there? Have I played football there? And like little things like that. And it's like, now, if I think back to what I was doing in 25, 27, I'm just like, oh, it's dead murky. But it's because I was so full of drugs. And it was just sky high at the weekend. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it would just be on the floor. It would just be down, down, down. And then Friday, get some gear, do a little bit. Saturday was the big night. And then back up and then down. And all through that time, I was just getting, in reality, I was getting worse and worse and worse, and my anxiety was getting bigger and bigger, and it got to the point where things like normal stuff, again, because you couldn't, to go shopping, to go and do a weekly shop, I felt like I needed to have a drink. I knew I couldn't take half an E just to get me car and go and think, but I was thinking like one beer help us calm us down a bit, and then I can still drive, one beer illegal and all the rest of it, but I never did. So I always like forced myself without the tools to help myself, because I hadn't been to therapy by then, but I would force myself to go to the shops. But that 40 minutes of going around the shops would just be constantly person staring at us, they're staring at us, and I'd be looking down, and I would be sweating, and I would feel my face going red. Do you know, like when you're like angry or anxious and you blush like really strong, that would happen. It wasn't just in my mind, it was actually happening. And I would feel the sweat like in my eyes sometimes. Standing in the queuing for anything, would just be stood there. And what that was, particularly the queuing, is because you just stood there with nothing to do other than think about stuff. And it's kind of, it's time by yourself. And so all I was thinking in that moment was, you're really ugly, people are looking at you, they're talking about your skin, and like they're gonna say something. So I'd be queuing desperately to get back to the car, and I'd be sweating, and I would feel the sweat and everything. And I lived like that for about 2 years. And it was just so, I can't believe I actually got through it, because it was so damaging, and it was such a ridiculous way to live. Before seeking help, I was thinking like, and when I traced it back, I was like, so I was definitely like 26, 27. I was like, actually, I was feeling rough around about probably 25. I talked to the therapist. It was like any time before. I said, well, I was just getting like worse and worse. But them 2 years were particularly bad when I was on my own. When I was around people, I was either distracted enough so it wasn't too bad and deal with it internally, or I was around people I was taking drugs with. So then when I was taking drugs and having a drink and that, I was comfortable, but that was because of the drink and the drugs. But certainly, like in the times when I was by myself, it was really bad, and I would spend like time, like what I would spend a lot of time doing is like getting a mirror there and a mirror there, and like looking at the side of my face. Because I remember the first time I went to the GP for help, he was looking at my skin, and he actually said, like, yeah, it should clear up with medication. There's plenty we can try. He says, you can be left with a couple of scars there. And that just was just like, in my mind there, I was like, what's he on about? And then I went back home, and I'm looking at my skin, and like from the front, I couldn't quite see what he was talking about. So I got another mirror, and I looked at the mirror, and I looked at the side of my face for the first time. So this was like 1920, and I'm looking at the side of my skin. I go, God, it's worse than I thought. And I'm like, really, like that, with 2 mirrors. And I'm like, there's going to be scarring. And then I've got acne scarring. But at that moment, that was one of the worst times when I like realised, even if it clears up, I'm still going to have bad skin. And that was a lot to deal with, because again, I didn't have anything other than the doctor at the time was like, he was brilliant mind, like he eventually really, really helped. All he talked about the medication and then mentioned quite fairly, look, you're going to have some scarring. What he didn't realise was I was going through such a bad time with that. Knowing him the way he dealt with us when I went to him about the drugs, he probably would have sat down and says, we can help you with that, we can help you with the counsel, and there's people you can talk to if you're having some mental health issues. I can send you here. But he didn't realise, because I didn't tell anyone. I just like, it just sparked in my mind. He's like, what's he talking about, scars? I was like, God. And that's when I realised that, like, even if I never got another spot, I'd be left with spots, but acne scarring. So, because it was all about my skin. So that was pretty tough. And through the drug days and everything else, quite often I would have mirrors thinking, oh, does that angle look all right? Not really thinking, like, even if that angle looks all right and feeling comfortable for a few seconds, it's no one's going to look at us from that like angle that looks all right. It was mad. It was.
I think that mental scarring though, because like the similarities here from where I was were alcohol and you were drugs. You know, drugs, I dabbled a bit, but nothing too serious.
Yeah.
Like my alcohol abuse, and it was very much the same, because I had a career, had a job and stuff like that. So Monday to Friday, so I would never drink during the week at all. But like, very much like you, get to a Friday through to Sunday, but the levels of anxiety Monday till I would say then the Friday again, so I'd like hammer training during the week, so I'd feel great for a Friday, and then it would be like Groundhog Day, but that anxiety, and like I kind of completely get going to supermarkets. There was just like this fear like that I had, certainly Monday to probably the Thursday, because things started to wear off a little bit, but it just like trying to cope with that. But probably similar to yourself, like it really about that confidence thing. Being a confident person, but still like needing something just to flip and, you know, get us through that kind of weekend. And
I know people who like they might have known us then, or might know us now, and they might watch this. And I've opened up on another podcast as well about like what I went through, and they might watch this or listen to this or watch the other one, listen to that one, and they'll be like, "What? Really? You're kidding, man? Yeah, you all that time you were going through all that," because again, the outward personality or the other, it wasn't a fake personality, because it was a part of my personality. It's like it was outgoing and happy and garrulous, and I loved doing that. I loved having a bit crack. I loved having a laugh. I loved going out, but I hated going out as well, and I loved going out, but I didn't want to go out. But I did want to go out, so it was all these things like spinning around. It was all different thoughts in my mind. But I always put on that show of everything's all right, and nobody ever said to us during that time, even during the drug days. Nobody said like, "Are you all right?" No one said like, "Is something going on with you?" And I don't think that's because people didn't care. I think it's because I hid it that well that nobody even noticed to ask.
That sounds exhausting, doesn't it? I mean, both of you are talking about that, just the journey up to the weekend, but the push and pull of wanting to and enjoying it, and then not wanting to, just sounds exhausting.
I was. That's what ended up. It reached the head where I started having panic attacks when I was at work, and I used to work with Parcel Force, and at the time I used to deliver to the Metro Centre, and the thing that tipped us over the edge. So I'd had anxiety constantly. Every moment I was awake, I felt anxious. But that had become normal. So I didn't quite realise I was anxious all the time. It was only when the anxiety started lifting, I was thinking, I need to maybe just calm down a little bit here. But then I'd calm down to an anxiety level that other people will be probably having a panic attack, because I just got used to it, I just lived with it. And then the first little panic attack I had was when I was driving, and I just pulled over and stopped. I thought, I don't feel very well. I thought, it's because I was taking drugs and that. Because this is just part of, I'm on a bit of a come down. So that's all right. But then the next one I had, and I can still remember it so vividly. I was delivering, and when you deliver at the Metro Centre, you kind of park up into the service yards, and the service corridors go out through the fire escapes. So when you're walking through the mall at the Metro Centre, where the fire escapes are, they also delivery drivers' entrance onto the public walkways. So I went through there, walked across, and I was delivering to Callus Pegasus. That's how long ago it was. It was Callus Pegasus, and we'd had the machines, the first versions of the electric machines people signed on. Put the parcel down, spoke to the lass, like really pretty, with blonde, like wavy hair. And I can remember that, and I remember saying, right, I put her name in, I can't remember her name, and I handed the machine over for her to sign. And as soon as I went like that, bang, justice come on, and it was like, my face went red. I could feel my face going red, and it was almost instant. Face went red, started sweating. Do you know what you feel sweat in your hair? It was like that, and I could feel sweating in my hair, and I just like started like shaking a bit. And then she signed, and then I took it off her, and I don't know if I ran, but in my mind, I can remember either walking very quickly, burst through the door, slammed the door shut, and just sat down in the service corridor, and I just couldn't breathe. Or I felt like my chest was tight, and I was like, I was just like, you'll be all right. I was shaking, and I was just, and then I got like some clarity, and I'm like looking around, I'm like, right, I need to get back to the van. I'm walking back to the van. I was like, oh, what the fuck was that? Like seriously, I was like, oh, this is, and then I started thinking about everything, and I was like, oh, this is too much. This, like, I need to do something about this. So I actually rang my doctors, Southwick Health Centre, and I rang up, and it was the same afternoon. And I rang and I said, are there any appointments? And then the woman was like, oh no, you've got to ring at like 8 in the morning, or you've got, she said, I can get you in. And I said, well, I work. And she was like, I can get you in. And I was just saying, I really, I'm getting emotional now thinking about it. So like, can I please have an appointment today? So anyway, she'd gone to see, and she was like, right, come in for 5:30. The doctor will see you. So it must have been the way I was asking, because I just sounded like I was almost like I'm sounding now, but probably a bit worse. And I went, it was Dr. Clark, shout out to Dr. Clark, and I remember sitting in the waiting room, so I got there like 5:20, so right, I've got to be on time. But GP's always overrun, so it was getting on for like 5:45, and I sat there and I just started again, like having like sweats and that. And my name got called out, went in, sat down. Dr. Clark like looks us up and down, because I must have looked at right state, and he looks us down and he goes, how can I help? And I was like, oh, nothing. He's like, well, what's up? I was like, nothing. And he was looking at his hands, you look like something's up, and he says, you've come to doctors? And he looked at and I goes, oh, well, I'm just having a few problems. I feel like nervous and anxious all the time. And then he says, are you drinking a lot? And I was like, no. He says, are you taking drugs? And then I just burst into tears. And it was like, and he went, are you taking drugs? And I told him what I was taking, and I can remember these words he said, I think you should stop taking drugs, Christopher. And I was like looked up in tears. I'm like, okay. And then he referred. This was in the end of November. 18 and a bit, it will be 19 years in this end of this month. God, it's November now, isn't it? So it's 19 years at the end of this month when I went to see the GP, and he says, I'll refer you to a psychiatrist. So I burst into tears again. I'm like, fucking hell, psychiatrist? I thought he would just give us some tablets. And he gave us some beta blockers to like calm things down a bit. And I actually got an appointment for the following February, which people wait so long now for appointments. But I remember getting the appointment, and it was Cherry Knowles Hospital. Now, Cherry Knowles is now Hopewood Park, but Cherry Knowles is the hospital, like the mental health hospital. Back in them days, it was the loony bin, it was the nut house, and I remember getting the letter and just looking at it and going, oh, I'm just Cherry Knowles.
I think
is this
stigma.
I didn't tell anyone.
I was younger with Cherry Knowles, and it was kind of like so to be referred like that. Again, very similar. I know when again the similarities, but me with alcohol. I remember being over a shopping centre, I don't know if it was Heaven or somewhere like that, and sat in the car, and again, like, you know, I'd had a heavy weekend, no doubt I'd caused some whatever, and I remember sitting in the car and coming out, I don't know if I'd been to the bank or something, and just sat in the car, very similar, and just massive breakdown, just the anxiety levels, and speaking to my ex-partner at the time, And that's when I went to get some help. Well, I got tablets because I was like, again, I'm like, like I'm not taking any tablets or anything like that. And it was probably it was certainly the start of my journey. But to then for you again at that age to be referred to a
psychiatric hospital.
It just
it was an outpatient. And I remember the psychiatric nurse. So I went for an assessment with a psychiatrist who, like, you fill in a form, and I was honest with the form. You get like a score. So you like have you ever been suicidal? So it's like 1 out of 10. Have you ever been like anxious? Have you ever harmed yourself? All that. So my score was too low for a psychiatrist. So I got referred to a psychiatric nurse. So doing some work with him, and how he kind of like framed it and helped us and made us understand what I'd been going through. That was kind of like, that calmed us. It was a Monk William Hospital where I had me appointments, and that like calmed us down so much, just speaking to him. And like, because I'd stigmatized mental health myself, never really understanding that what I was going through was a mental health crisis over a couple of years, and didn't want to admit to myself that I was having problems. I told my sister, didn't tell my mum and dad, because I knew my mum would not, like, she might have dealt with it well, but she would have been worried about it. So I didn't tell her. I didn't want my dad would have dealt with it like a boss, but I didn't want him to have a secret from my mum. So I told my sister, I told a couple of my friends I went clubbing with, and then that was it. Didn't tell anybody else, didn't tell work, didn't want to, I'd stigmatized it to the point where I thought, like, I need to tell someone. I told my sister and then a couple of friends, and they were all really told me drug dealer. And they were all, even the dealer was like, all right, fair enough. He goes, well, says, if that's what's happening. It was like he was a great lad, actually. He was a really great lad, and he was like, and he was the only person I'd buy from, because I'd tried other people, and it was just, he got like really good stuff, but he said, like, wait. But the way he handled it was like brilliant. And then my psychiatric nurse was amazing, like, and then it was like, if somebody had said it was at 27, it's going to take you a good like 9. Well, it's been a couple of years when I felt comfortable, probably late 30s, when I started feeling properly comfortable with myself. If it said it's going to take you that long, like, I'm not sure I would have thought I could do it. Like, I would have thought, because I was thinking like, a few months and I'll feel on top of the world again. But it was like a couple of years of therapy and then a lot of work on myself and a lot of putting things in place, putting the foundations in place for the future. That's, I guess, bearing a lot of fruit, like, in the last couple of years.
You know, you mentioned there the bit about the doctors when you were sitting in front of the doctors. I think it's worth flagging up because I can relate to it so much. I think generally blokes, we struggle with a language for saying how we're feeling and when we're struggling.
Yeah.
And it kind of hit me there when you were saying it, that you were off and on the path almost, from you were chopping and changing, and in that moment you didn't have anything to say, but thankfully you were in front of somebody who was present enough to keep pushing.
Yeah.
I mean, how important is that?
It's huge that people, like, at the very last hurdle, I almost like failed to get myself the help or ask for the help, because I'd rang up, begged for the appointment, got the appointment, like, I've actually took that step. Then the next step was sitting in waiting as the appointment like time overran, having like an anxiety attack that felt like it was tipping towards a panic attack. Then getting into the doctor's surgery itself, sitting in front of the doctor, then I'm asking like, oh, yeah, all right, like, how's things? Why are you here? Oh, nothing. Well, I was sat there like a sweaty mess, like tears were still like running down my face. And if he just went, okay then, that's fine then, as long as you're all right, I may have well turned around and went, I should have said, and I got home and then, why? But he like pushed it a bit. He was like, well, obviously not, right? You've made an appointment with the doctors and you don't look great, so what's going on? And it was there that like I then went into like almost revealing as much as I needed to reveal then to get the help. So, but all I had to say there was like, well, actually, I burst into tears. I was crying, and he knew what to ask. So you could just go to the doctors if you make that step, and it's so important, like that step of asking for help. And sometimes, like what breaks my heart sometimes is like when you read about people who have committed suicide, and you think in that moment they probably think there's nobody either cares or there's no one that can help them. And you just think if you ask for help, if you present to your family or your friends or the GP, like I need some help, you'll get it. You will get that help, and there'll be somebody there. And all the different angles of suicide, there are a tragedy. That's one that really like hits home with me. Like when I think about people in that like lonely moment of like, there's nothing, I can't get any help, nobody cares. When there's so many people that probably will care, there can't be very many people who don't have anyone that cares about them.
I think it's for me. If I look back, certainly at my lowest point and extremely, suicidal thoughts and everything, it got to that point where I felt as though like I personally felt as though like I couldn't speak to anybody, family or friends about it, which was a real challenge, and it certainly helps just going back and the NHS and doctors certainly making that first step, and I had to make that, like even though like my ex-partner had said, I think you need to go to the doctors. It took me so long to make that first step. And I just think for anybody listening to this, with both myself and Chris, where you've been before, is seek third-party help in that case. Make that step, whether it's GP, whether it's some kind of online, because I bet there's a lot of people who feel as though they can't open up, and just going back to what you were saying about certainly suicide as well. I've got a feeling that a lot of people out there will be like, I cannot speak to anybody, family and friends, but there are people who are probably not as close to you.
Well, I went like then, what we're discussing now is like, back then, these, like what I've already discussed, like with me acne and how that made us feel, them are my deepest, darkest secrets. And I even when I was telling people like, I'm having trouble with drugs, it was always framed in a way of like, I've just took too many drugs, so it's having that effect, and I just need to do that. But then I started talking to the GP and particularly my psychiatric nurse, and when as deep as I am now, coming away from that, knowing, I'm not telling my friends that, like, I wouldn't tell my mates that. By the way, I hate the way I look. That's why I'm taking so many drugs and I've had all these problems, because you don't, like, there was still that macho, like, I'm all right, I'm not, because it's a weakness, like, or you feel like it's a weakness, when in reality it's just it's an issue you need to deal with. It's not weak, everybody goes through them to one degree or another. It hit me in that way. But now, when we're talking about confidence and what confidence is, so I'm so comfortable with myself, and I've got so much confidence to sit in a podcast being videoed and then discussing this thing that was my deepest, darkest secret. So that's how comfortable I am with myself now. I'll go on a podcast, I'll speak to people about it, I'll talk to people about it. My mum, my dad might watch this, and I talk to them, and one, ironically, or maybe ironically is not the right word, but I've still not sat down and spoken to my mum and dad about all this. I don't think they'll watch this. They've definitely not watched the other podcast. I don't know if they know whether other people, because I put stuff on social media, and like their friends, they're not on social media and things like that. So maybe there's a little bit of my confidence that isn't quite there yet, that sits down in front of my mum and dad and says, when I was in my 20s, and I was still living here, and I used to spend all day in bed on a Sunday, like, I had this problem. Because even now, like, it's not that I don't want them to know about it, because they could easily watch this and listen to the podcast. Like, I think my mum would still worry that I would go back to that. And like, that's a like, I've got a feeling in my stomach now of my mum thinking, one, why did he not tell us? we could have helped. They might think that. And secondly, is he going to start taking drugs again? Is he going to go down that path again? And that just, even now, I think it's better not to tell my mum. My dad would deal with it. I know my dad would be chill. They say what it does, and maybe my mum would deal with it. Maybe I'm doing her a disservice in this point in life where she wouldn't worry so much. But there's two people who probably the only people that don't know, the people who were like my closest family resident. We are close, love them to bits, and say them all the time, and so that's.
But there's also like with close family and friends as well. We either think or they can't deal with those kind of things, that they're not equipped to give you that good advice that you need. It's like, maybe the parent side of it kicks in a bit, and I failed, and I don't really want to talk about that too much. And
I think my mum's like, it comes from, my mum would just be like the majority of mothers out there who found out there's something seriously wrong with her child, they would just become overprotective, and then she'd get so anxious that then she'd have issues. And so I think the way I dealt with it then, certainly the way I dealt with it then, was for the best, because if I'd told my mum and she'd reacted in that way of like being overbearing, like she would have been worrying about us going out the front door, going to work. And if I'd said to them, I'm going out tonight, going out on the town, I know for a fact she would have been sat at home crying her eyes out, worrying that I was going to go down that path again. So I think in that respect, but it does flick in my head, in my mind, like every so often, like I'm nearly 20 years down the line, I've never sat down and said to my mum and dad, I went through this, by the way.
I think it's this thing about you've got to talk to somebody, but at the same time you do need to pick the right person, I guess, and you will select or think about that. Sometimes if you're in a real desperate state, it's whoever, and you just got to hope that they're the right person or will do the next step. But I think that's the benefit of the professional side. I often think like a bit like, you're on a jumbo jet and suddenly you're the only person, you've got to land this thing. You can't do it yourself, there's nobody else. You need that professional to talk it down for you, to bring you down safely. That's what a professional is there for, to help you land the craft safely, and then you can start to bring in other people to help you and get you back on track, because you can't do it yourself, can you?
Somebody one of the lads at Iceguys who were discussing about opening up and telling people about your problems, and then one lad made the point, is like, some people don't want to burden people with their problems, and some people do feel like that if I tell my friend that, then in the same way that I felt with my mum and dad, I didn't want them to worry so much, and that's the burden on them. If they were the only people I could have told, I probably would have told them. I think I would have anyway. But as far as like the people that I told, like my sister was brilliant, like really good. She's a bit more sensible than me. She's a bit more like level-headed. It always has been. And then my two friends, who ironically enough were the two friends that I took the majority of me drugs with, they were brilliant as well, and it worked out. I mean, I guess with hindsight, it worked out.
So
just quickly, very quickly, when you said about asking help. So if you're not sure how to manifest like how you're feeling, just go to your GP and tell them you're feeling shit, and they'll get there. They'll ask you the right questions, and the help's there. I know there's a lot of talk about like waiting lists and everything else, but there's so many organisations out there that like Mind in Washington and things like that, and even to a much lesser degree Iceguys, that where kind of there is maybe a little tiny building block to then it feeling a little bit better. But there's so many people out there that care about people that they've never even met, or don't know the backstory, or don't know that they're struggling, that there's just this help there. So I ask for it. Like, it's
just going back to the GP as well. I'm going to emphasise it as well. And the thing is, like, if you do turn up at the GP and you say, "Well, I'm not too bad, I'm all right," it's like, no, like you need, because otherwise they're just going to say, "Listen, you need to go away," or whatever. You need to be honest how you're feeling, and if you're feeling so low, so anxious, you need to tell them that. Because if you just say, "Oh, well, I'm not bad," well, naturally it's like going to your family, your friends. "Oh, no bother. I'm okay for you. I'll see you later." Just be really open and honest. And I know when I went, I was like, "Listen, this is how I feel." And that's where it was taken extremely seriously. And they will like there's a lot of talk about waiting lists these days, but any dealings I've had with the NHS, like over the years, if it's severe, they absolutely.
Oh yeah. I mean, like if I said to one of my mates, "How are you feeling?" Like you've just said that, most people go, "I think are alright." If one of my mates turned around and went, "No, I didn't feel well at all," like I'd immediately be like, "Oh, what's up? Well, what's up?" Like I'm not a therapist or like that, but if somebody said to me, like, "Oh, I've had a rough week," I'd be like, "Well, what's been going on?" But if somebody said to me, "No, I'm not feeling good at all," like that's an alarm bell going off in my head now, and I would be asking and then trying to signpost as best that I can. But it's happened in Iceguys. It's happened. I've seen it happen. I've had my own experience of asking for help, and like again, I kind of get out how many people out there now with Iceguys, and then linking up with other organisations within the community, some voluntary, some community interest companies. There's a lot of people out there who want to help people, and if you're going through something on your own, you'll still be going through it, but you can go through with somebody sitting beside you or helping you or signposting you to the right place. And
there's
a lot out there
as well. There are. So just talk us through. So you've asked for help. You've got some help.
Yeah.
How do the next few years kind of pan out? So that was 27-year-old. 27-year-old. How did it? Because it's not an overnight thing.
No.
There's some. So
I was hoping it would have been like at the start. I was like, a couple of months I'm going to be sound.
Confidence, and like being confident in yourself. That doesn't happen overnight. Quitting, coming off the drugs and everything. Right. How do the years kind of to pan out up to where we are now?
Yeah, well, 27 it was probably just shy of 2 years of like therapy. It was getting like I'm sure I got like every like month, and then it was every 6 weeks, and then it was every 2 months. Or like the time in between was getting longer as I was getting sort of slowly better. Did cognitive behaviour therapy as part of that, which really helped me. Like learning to like, instead of like when I was feeling anxious, like after I still had that anxiety, but I never had another panic attack. I felt so much better. In the first couple of weeks, I was like, I've stopped taking drugs. I've been to get help. I've got these beta blockers. I'm going to be all right. This is mint. And then as I got near my first appointment, I was like, oh God, it's cherry nose. And then things were going through my mind. Then I was like, I'm not going out this weekend because like I'm not in a million years. So that first flush of I've gone to get help, what a happy day is, that wore off pretty quickly. And then the work started. So I went to my first appointment, just sat down, basically emotional again. And then my next appointment, emotional, next appointment. But he dug right back and literally I thought I was going simply to discuss and deal with the point, like maybe that first time I took speed. And it was all about drugs and not taking drugs. Didn't even think about drink. Didn't even think about my acne. Didn't think he would be talking about that. But he drilled right back, and he went so far back. And he was talking about like, so when you were younger, did anything happen when you were younger? I was like, nah. I used to be like outgoing and stuff like that. And I had a few problems with like spots and like self-esteem, like my self-image. So he was like, he picked up on that, and he goes, well, how would that make you feel and everything else? And then he was talking about like. And he cottoned on about like I took drugs before going out. He was like, did you ever drink before you went out? And I was like, oh yeah, I'd have a couple of beers. And so, well, why did you have a couple of beers before going out? And you're going out to drink all night anyway. And then I was like, it was in my mind when he was talking. So I was having a conversation with myself while having a conversation with him, thinking, I don't want to talk about this. He's going to ask us about me. He's going to drill in, like he's going to talk about acne. And I'm like sitting there like, but that was the start point. That was like the nub. So him as a therapist was like, I'm onto something here. And that's when I was like, how did you, and he was like, I remember him saying like, how did you feel having acne? And I was like, I hated it. I hated having acne. And I hated how I looked. And that would feel me. So I'm like feeling like a little bit emotional now to remembering like the Christopher back then, like this lost little kid who was actually 27, 28-year-old, and like discussing how he felt when I was younger, and like thinking like how much it affected us. But through talking about it, for therapy and everything else, that's what started building us back up. Because I remember him saying to us, and he was looking at us. He was talking about that. I'm laughing about it now. At the time, like for a flash, I took it really bad. He was looking at us, he goes, you're not the worst looking lad in the world, man. He goes, you're not the best, but you're not the worst. And when he says you're not the best, I was like, gee, you bastard. Suddenly I had this confidence of I'm the best looking bloke in the world. But it was and just that little thing that he said, and I was like, you're not the worst looking bloke in the world. And it was I walked away from that thinking, well, maybe I'm not and I looked and I started looking at myself different, stopped looking in the mirror for every angle, stopped worrying, realised I've got some acne scarring, but I'm not the worst looking bloke in the world. And then it just started from there, and little things he would say. But what he did with the cognitive therapy, it was all about when you're feeling anxious, don't battle it. Don't start going, stop feeling anxious. It's right, you're feeling anxious, okay? Just go with it. A few breaths. Why are you feeling anxious? People are staring at you. And one of the things he did is do you stare at other people and think, look at that, look at that, look at that. I'm not going to say something about that. And I was like, of course I don't. He goes, but you're telling me other people are looking at you. And another weird backhanded compliment thing that he said, or not backhanded compliment, but a weird thing that I took bad for a silly second. He was like, you're not that important to people who are in the shop, you know. He's like, nobody's looking at you thinking, oh, hang on a second, we're just going to stop shopping a second. Seeing his skin. It's not many people have that thought process. So just try and remember that next time he says, because it's going to happen. You're going to feel anxious, you're going to have trouble, you're going to have to go with it. He says, but realise that you're about as important to the other people in the shop as they are to you. And I was like, right. So the next time I went shopping, the first time, I felt sound. And I was like, actually, he's right. I've not noticed anybody. I cannot remember anybody I've ever gone shopping with. And then I went again, and then someone would catch my eye, and that thought would drop in, stand at your skin. And I was thinking, no, remember what psychiatrist in our stage called Doug actually. Remember what Doug said? They're probably looking for something on the shelf, something like that. So all these little brain tricks that you would throw in, and then I would think about that. So I wouldn't be thinking about feeling anxious about my skin, and it just got better and better and better and better. And it was this very, very slow snowball effect, and it took years. So up to probably about 29, got discharged, and I remember that at work, I was playing golf, and the psychiatrist nurse, he played golf, and the last session just talked about golf. He went, how are you feeling? I said, I've been about a good week. I went and played golf and everything, and I've had a good month actually. I went to play golf, and he was like, all right. So, yeah. I said, well, you've mentioned that before, and he's like, aye. And then he started talking about the couple of rounds he'd had, and I was just hacking at it like shit. And then at the end of that session, we spent an hour just chatting about golf and playing football and things like that. And he goes, you ready to be discharged? And for a moment, I was like, oh, I'm not I need this. And he goes, you told us you were feeling all right. In fact, you told us you'd had a good month or so. And he says, and all we've talked about is golf and everything else. And he says, now's the time. He says, you're fine. He says, you're ready to. He says, you've got the tools. He says, I think you're going to be all right. He says, we've spoke about it. He says, you're always going to have ups and downs. You're always going to have them, but you'll be able to deal with them better. And I always pass that on to people. If people are talking about mental health, and people talking about things I just want to have you. I just want to have confidence. I just want to be confident. I just want to be happy. And it's well, you're going to have times when you're happy and confident. You're going to have times when you're not confident and you're unhappy. It's about having being able to. For me as well, I get sky high sometimes, and then I get a bit dodgy, and I struggle sometimes with being that happy. But I definitely struggle sometimes with being that low as well. And times when my confidence has been a bit shot, but certainly getting discharged and then doing it myself and feeling all right. And then he was like, "You've got my number." Mobile phones had become a thing. He's got my number. He says, "You can always ring." And that little thing of so there is a bit of a safety net there that helped us. So and then I just started, and then later that year I moved out to my mum and dad's. I was 29, and because I had a little bit extra money, not spending so much money on coke, I'd had a bit savings and stuff like that. So I moved out into my own place where I still live now, actually. And then kind of me successes with lasses had been very brief and sort of sporadic up to 27, 28, well, actually into me early 30s. started seeing like lasses and feeling confident, properly confident, where you didn't just get off with someone on a night and like because you're full of drugs and everything, it's full of confidence. So I had a couple of relationships and kind of done the things in my 30s that a lot of people do in their 20s. But I had that like delay because I was so full of drugs and everything else, and like enjoyed the ups and downs and started to deal with them a little bit better and thought, things are great, but never getting too far at the point where everything's going to be all right for good. I feel confident, I feel happy, but always in the back of my mind thinking, well, if it comes, it's going to come. You're going to feel a bit dodgy. You can deal with it, and that's another part of being comfortable with myself, knowing that I could walk out of here today and I could get a phone call with bad news. Something could happen, an incident could happen, and I could feel like my confidence is dented or I feel unhappy. But like I've like got the tools of how to deal with that better. I'm not saying something's going to happen where I don't fly off the handle or go off the rails a little bit or really struggle, but I'm comfortable with that life's going to bring us ups and downs.
I think there's just no doubt that you're going to have ultimate highs and ultimate lows.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned about tools, because they've clearly made you a much more confident person over the years.
Yeah.
Without those tools, because the worst things can happen. You can go through a split in a relationship, a close member of your family can pass, you can lose a job, and it's all them things where, like, if you haven't got the tools and the coping mechanisms, it's the end of the world. It's the absolute, and it's not the end of the world. It's really not. And it's known that when these things come along, and it definitely what's helped me like over the last good few years now is going, okay, that's not great. That's really not great. But I can do two things here. I can literally just flip and shrivel into a ball, super anxious and everything. Or I can get a hold of the situation and manage it that way, and have the confidence to do that is just it's great strength.
I'll tell you one thing I'm not frightened of now, and we've discussed it already, is like telling people and asking for help. It's almost the first thing I do is discuss. If I've got an issue, I'll discuss it with somebody. And to give a very recent and a very good example, I was in town. It was a couple of months ago now. It'll have been, because where I work now, it's a swimming school, and we work to the school term, so it was just before, so like start of September. So I had to do a meeting on a Saturday afternoon over in the town where the business office is. So I'm driving round to go there, and as I pulled round the corner into the car park round the back, there's a lad and a lass who were like off their heads, and they shouted something at the car. And I like looked like that, and I'm like, so just ignored them. Anyway, so I pulled around in the car park, and they couldn't walk an hour. They were off their bins. She had a cut on her hand, there was just blood all over, which I noticed a little bit after. So they come up, and the guys, hey mate, I will give you 50 quid if you give us a lift to Horton. And I'm like, looking, and in that moment, like you're not thinking, geez, all right, this is going to be a bit dodgy, and we're going to have to deal with this. And he had his top off. She was covered in, but actually he didn't have a top room. So I don't know what had happened to them, but they were obviously either drunk or drugged. They were out of control. So I looked at them and I was like, no, I just said to them, I've got to go to a meeting for work. I'm at work, actually. I can't give you a lift. And then she was like, oh, wait a minute, please, we'll give you 50 quid, you give you 50 quid. Now what I should have said to them was, well, 50 quid, I'll get you a taxi, you can get a taxi. But I just kept saying to them, well, I can't, I've got to work. And then I seen her hand, and stupid me, I was like, oh, are you all right? And then she was like, oh no, we got attacked by these druggies around the corner. And I was like, all right, I can say it's a bit rough around here, like on the weekend, stuff like that. Like, not quite computing that something bad was or could have happened. And then the lad was like, oh, wait, man, we'll give you 100 quid. And I was like, and I was at this time looking in the car, and I'm going, I've got to go to work. And that's when it started looking at these two and thinking, shit. I'm like, these didn't look like, this is not a good situation. So the lad guns, the last guns, oh man, fuck your work, man. She was looking at us and I just went, no. And then I just walked away. So I was just fight or flight. So I chose flight. And I'm walking away and I hear him saying, oh man, I'll just do it, man. I'll do a couple of years. And then I was thinking, they're going to rob us in my car here, like. So I just kept walking. I didn't look back, kept walking, went through the gates of the office building, shut that behind us, security gates, you need a pass to get in, shut that behind us, and just immediately, so I'm looking, I could hear her shouting, we're going to smash your fucking car up. My car was pretty much the only one in the car park. We're going to smash your car up, this, that, and the other. So I'm like looking, and then the walk back out, and I don't know if someone had seen what was going on, or they'd been causing problems, but a car come run. And then I was just like, oh, thank God for that. And then I just went back in. And then I told the people who I had the meeting, I was saying, there's two Reggies out there. And someone else, guys, I seen them, the copper was like talking to them, and they looked like staying. I told them what happened. And then done the meeting, went back out, and I like looking around like that, like looking around, seeing if it was still there, and they'd gone. This was like an hour and a half later or something like that. Jumping in the car. And as I was driving home, like I started thinking, I should have smacked him. And I should have been like, fuck you. What you doing? You're not getting me car. Piss off. And I was thinking by the time the 20-minute drive home, I'd framed myself as a complete coward for not either smacking him or being more like, fuck off, getting in my car. And then I started thinking, well, if they looked at me and thought, he looks like a right pushover, we'll get in his car, he's no bother. And then I started like feeling like, really like low. So I told my partner, and I'm like, this thing happened there. I was like, it's probably like gone now in my mind. And she was like, well, actually, it sounds like you handled that absolutely perfectly, because the lad was pretty ripped as well. He just looked like a maniac. I mean, they were only young. They were probably about like 17, 18, like maybe a little bit up, and certainly not more than like 22, something like that. And she was like, sound like the rough heads. Anything could happen. And she went, and I was like, well, I'm not like much of a fighter anyway, so I don't know. And she was like, well, there's that as well. So if something happened and this lad could handle himself, she says, you literally could be dead, or you could be badly injured. She went, and I was thinking, all right. And then I was thinking, well, what if I had smacked him and caught him, and he went down and smacked his head, and then ended up dead? So all these things, like, and it took us on the Sunday night. So this was on a Saturday afternoon. Felt all right Sunday. Saturday night, slept all right. Then on the Sunday night, I woke up about 1 o'clock. I was just going through in my mind. Like, either I should have smacked. Still was going through in my mind of like, I'm less of a man because I wasn't like confrontational, or I didn't go back at them in the way that they came at me. But so there's like, at that point, my confidence had like took a right smashing. So I was like, if you'd said to us then, how's your confidence on a 1 to 10? I'd be like, probably about 2, like if 10 was the highest, because I felt so like that I'd handled it incorrectly, or was less of a man, or was a coward for not like doing what very few men actually turn out. The ones I spoke to about were like, well, I wouldn't have done that. Like, I would have, you walk away from shit like that. Like, you never know what's going to happen. Even people who can handle themselves were saying like, nah, you've done the right thing there. Because I put it in the Iceguys WhatsApp and said to them, I was like, hey, this happened. But there's like that comfort with that. I was asking for help there. I was asking for help by saying, this thing happened to me. It's left this thing feeling, and I put that word. I said, it's left feeling like a bit of a coward. And then all the lads were like saying like, oh, I had this happen. I was like outnumbered, and I was with my girlfriend, and I just had to walk in it. And like one of the lads was just like, I felt shit like in front of me last night, but she said the same thing. Like, no, we need to get away from that. Like, and a lot of lads come up with things like, well, this lad was starting some shit with me, and it was just like, I don't know what to do with that. Like,
it's funny because like I was out at the weekend, and I'm not going into detail about it, but it's a similar situation. And if you look at coping mechanisms, and I know when like, before I'd stopped drinking for those 3 years, I was certainly more angry and agitated with situations and stuff like that. But there was something at the weekend where I did have somebody who objected to something. I'll be very vague with it, but it was just like, listen, I apologise if I've offended you in any way. It's really not the person who I am. But when I was walking home after that, I was quite angry about it. I was thinking, hang on a minute, it was a little bit out. Okay, I get it. I might have been a little bit out of order, but I apologised numerous times. And like for that, I probably had half an hour spell, but I didn't let it get to us.
Aye.
And again, I think unless I'd had those coping tools and mechanisms, you know, it would have really got to me. I would have handled the situation probably a little bit differently as well.
Aye.
So again, maybe it's a bit of life experience, confidence in dealing with situations, just walking away. 100%.
Maybe the like more confident thing is to be like confident in yourself is like you're not a coward by doing that. Like you're actually dealing with it far better than if I'd said, "Oh, well, then let's go," because it probably would have got my head kicked in. The likelihood is them two would have kicked my head in and pissed off with my car, so I would have just been left lying in a car park without my car. And
it's interesting, isn't it?
It took us a week to process it. Like it took us a good week of like going up and down, and then talking again with my partner. My partner's a psychologist, which is brilliant. So talking it through with her, and then talking it through with the lads, and then like thinking. So eventually, after a week, I got to the point where I was like, if that ever happens again, handle it that way again. Yeah. Just get out of that situation without like getting into anything, because the likelihood is you're going to end up. I could have ended up in hospital, and it would have been definitely would have been a case. If anything bad had happened, it would have been a case of like, why did I just walk away? Or run away? If they started anything, why don't you just get away from that situation?
So, obviously, there's some massive changes and turning points there. And, you know, you get on with life, you start to build confidence and what have you. What was the kind of next significant point in life that led to you really, again, I guess pivoting, but building on that journey?
I guess from therapy, well, quitting drugs 27, then going through a couple of years of therapy, working on that. Being discharged was a big moment, because then you haven't got that crutch of therapy, so to speak, in there. But then after a couple of weeks, couple of months, kind of get used to it and doing all right, actually, and feeling a lot more settled and feeling happy that I was in a completely different place. Work was going well. I always enjoyed work anyway. I always loved my time at Royal Mail and Parcel Force. But there was a point like early 30s when everything was nice and settled, but it was a little bit boring. So at work, I was kind of thinking, going like delivering parcels day on day. So kind of looked around, and there was the union. So I kind of got involved with the union, the Communication Workers Union. There was a guy who was the rep. I asked him, went on board as the substitute rep, and then developed from there. And what that did for me confidence, I kind of got to learn dealing with people, and you've got to have people skills. You've got to be able to like sit down and talk to people. You've got to empathise, and you've got to be confident then trying to help people with their problems. You've got to approach management, or you've got to be in between the people who've got the issues or who are causing issues and the management, and then you've got to navigate your way through and get the best possible outcome. So doing that for a few years, and I loved that. I absolutely loved it. It's one of the big things I miss about Royal Mail and my time there. So then became the rep when the rep who shepherded me through it stood down as rep. Guy called Ray Dacre, so I shout out to him, like he really helped us. And then became a union organiser as part of the local branch, which again, being a rep and an organiser, you've got to do a lot of public speaking. So you've got to, you can muddy through, but if you're going to do it right, then you've got to develop confidence. And at first I wasn't that good, because especially at my depot where I'd been for years, then suddenly stand up in front of people you knew. I was much better at standing up in front of people I didn't know and speaking than people who I knew. One, they take the piss if I stumbled or anything went wrong. You would see people in the background like looking like that or doing this. But the other thing is, it's an important job, so you've got to get it right, and you've got to speak, and you've got to do it correctly. So I got a lot of personal development from that. The organising work as well, that was tough sometimes, because part of my job, the main part of that job, was to go into workplaces and try to increase the union membership. So you go around speaking to people who aren't members and try to sell them the union. You're a salesman, basically. And if you don't do that right, then they're not going to join. But I developed that and got fairly good at it. Did that for a few years. Did that up till I left Royal Mail earlier this year. And that was important. And that really helped. And the camaraderie and everything that I got from the trade union was I still miss it now. I still say the updates on social media, and I still speak to people who are in the business, and I miss it a lot.
It must have been character building, because like I remember when I started life as a maintenance fitter doing an apprenticeship, and like some of the guys in the steel foundry, like if I was going to fix like some equipment, I mean you would just get told to fuck off or something like that. So I would imagine like the environment that you're in, and then all of a sudden you kind of move into that role of trying to get people into the union. I mean, that's character building and confidence building.
Oh yeah, especially if I was at the start, there was a good 20 odd sites that our branch covered, and a lot of those I'd never been in. Nobody knew who I was. I might know the rep in there, but I would basically be walking around on my own. And for a while, it's like, who's this? You'd have to go back. You only had like a short time on the morning as well. It wasn't like you had the whole day, because posties are in the building for half an hour, then they're out. And if you've ever been, you probably haven't been in a Royal Mail sorting office inside, all they want to do is get straight out the door. They don't want to talk to people, they'll have a bit crack, but they don't want to discuss, they don't want to be pulled away from their time to get out the door for anything more than a minute. So you've got to get around, you've got to do it right. So it was, sometimes it was a bit daunting, especially the bigger offices, but I grew to love it, like absolutely loved it. So it was difficult, but the experience and the education that I got from that was really invaluable. And in me, away from work, the other big thing that happened in my life that's still one of the major turning points, if not the major turning point in my life, is taking up triathlon. It's huge, and I've said this a lot. I've said this on my own podcast. I've said this to people all the time. I've said it recently this week when I started a new position, a new job. That almost everything good that's happening in my life right now is traced back to taking up triathlon, which is why I'm so evangelical almost about triathlon and trying to get people into the sport as well. It just branched off into so many different things, and it all goes back to that moment. It's kind of my year zero almost, and how that came about. I'd done a lot of overtime at Parcel Force at work in the run up to Christmas, so in the new year, it was like February time. Got me Christmas pay the end of January, so I was flush with money and thought, I quite like cycling, so I thought I'm going to buy myself a fancy road bike. So I went into Cycle World and browsing bikes and met someone called Paul Robson, who's better known as Rocker, who's probably responsible for about 90% of the triathletes in Sunderland.
He's trying to rope me in, but with my dodgy knee.
He's like, does Jedi mind tricks on people. So I went in and he was like, oh, well, what you buying a bike for? And I told him. And then he started talking about triathlon, but he's so enthusiastic. And I'm like, if somebody says to me, or if somebody like trying to get me to do something and they're enthusiastic about it, I'll have a go. I'm the one of them people who'll be like, suck it straight in. But everything he said on that day was like right. Like
had you been training before? Like, because we're not touched on anything. Like, were you sporty? Were you into running, cycling, swimming at all before that? So what age was this?
Not 38 when I took triathlon. I'd cycled a bit. I'd played football like in my 20s while I was going through the crazy time. Still sort of young enough to be able to recover and play football like a couple of times a week and Saturdays, Sundays, that kind of thing. But nothing as focused as what came with triathlon and how much I got. I enjoyed playing football with my mates. I enjoyed a bit of running, a bit of cycling. There was a lot of running when I was recovering through my 20s. I used that as a bit of a plank to help us with me recovery. I always knew exercise was good for the mind as well. But as far as anything to compare with triathlons, just nothing at all. Nothing at all gave us that focus, and nothing. I wasn't passionate about anything in the same way as I am about triathlon. So that was when my life changed, and I've thanked Rocker a fair few times actually, just saying like, by the way, this is this is because of you. And he's always like, he's dead like, I think he finds it difficult to take credit sometimes. Like he's always
a humble guy.
It's because of you. And I'm like, well, you started, you take the credit for starting it off, like lighting the spark. And then what came after, so much stuff, physical fitness, mental fitness. I've always said as well, it's a happy byproduct that I get physically fit and stay in shape. My training is about up here and me mental health, and it's just, I am physically fit as well. So it's but if I don't train, I know I don't train, I start feeling sluggish. Like recently, the last few months, I've been through a bit of a time, and my training's dropped, and the energy levels have dropped, and I'm out the other end of it now. Like I've restarted again and got back on it. But it's all about the mental health. But things like setting up my own company, Iceguys came from the open water swimming, and then carrying on through winter. Iceguys being the community interest company I run, but NXY, me company for coaching triathlon and setting up events, work with British Triathlon. In the community I found in triathlon as well, the friends that I've made in triathlon, it's been brilliant for my life, and I'll never not acknowledge how important it's been and how important it continues to be. And like Sun City Tri Club that I joined at the time, couldn't swim to save my life. I was very much a breaststroke swimmer, and I'd front crawl like out with my head out the water. Rocker was a coach at Sun City at the time, and I remember him saying, like, you need to put your face in the water, try putting your face in. I'm like, I've got my face in, my chin's in, but your face is not in, so you've got to get your face down. And when I think back to them first few sessions, good few months really of trying to learn front crawl, I just laughed my head off at how utterly rubbish I was. But that experience really helps me. I'm a triathlon coach now, so if somebody comes and they don't know how to swim front crawl, which is the one we all use in triathlon, I can let them, I'm like empathetic to the position they're in, and as soon as I explain, well, when I took it up, it was exactly like that. This is what I did. So just do that, and that's where you'll be, and you'll get it. But the community I found in triathlon, I was like dead frightened of starting training, because Rocker's an absolute machine. Like, he wins world championships and things like that in his age group. And we went training, and I can remember up at the road to nowhere, that first training session, I hadn't got my bike yet, so I was on my hybrid bike, which was probably about 90 kilos of bike, wearing footy shorts and just the top I got. Everybody else is in like Lycra and like fancy bikes and stuff. They're bombing up and down, and I plodded on. Young 12-year-old lad, he burned past us on the run, and he was like, "Oh, you just got in here. Thanks, mate." I was like, God almighty. But I finished it, and I'm like this. I'm smiling now. Like, I finished that that training session, and I was absolutely knackered. But there wasn't a second after where I was like doubled over, knackered. But all I was thinking was, this is amazing. This is class. Because I turned up, everybody was like, "Oh, yeah, all right." And I was like, "Oh, this is Chris," and everyone was just like, "All right, we're going to here. So what you do, just give it your best, and then just get stuck in and say what happens in at the end of it. Everyone was waiting, and a little round of applause, and it still happens now. Like, whoever rolls in last, they get a big sort of round of applause, and the encouragement. It wasn't a case of finishing way behind everyone else and thinking, "Oh, that was embarrassing. That's not for me." Because of the encouragement I had, it was like, I want to come back there. Can't wait for next Wednesday night. Come back and get better. And then got my bike, got a bit lighter, padded shorts, got some padded shorts as well, because the next morning wasn't too much fun. And then it just went from there, and started training with Sun City Tri Club and signing up for races and getting through races. It was the Sun City Duathlon was my first race. So I took it up in the February, and it was like end of March time of that year when I did my first race. And before it, I was just like, I was nearly vomiting. I was backwards and forwards to the toilet, like just terrified, and just thinking like, what have I signed up to? Because I got there and I looking at all the other bikes. I had my new bike, but I was looking at all the other bikes, and in my mind, everybody else had like a top end bike, and everyone else was like stick thin. Even though I've always been fairly slim, but I looked at some of the people and I'm just like, oh, I'm out with depth here, like. But at the end of it, like, I think I finished like 96th of 130. My race plan, people were talking about their race plans and stuff, and I was just like, I'm just going as fast as I can, and if I hopefully hang on to the person at the end, it was second last, because I had it in my mind I'd be like last place, and then just try and get past them at the end. But as it went on, and the atmosphere on race day, and as the race went on, I was like, oh no, because it loops back on itself, the run, it's like a loop, so you can see how many people are behind you. So I kind of knew I wasn't last, so that was like, this is class. And I crossed the finish line, and the feeling I got, like, I'm like welling up now, like I'm buzzing now. Even though it was a sprint duathlon, I've done longer races now. The feeling of crossing the finish line on that duathlon, I felt like I had won the Olympics, because it was so big in my mind for weeks before.
But it's one of them where, like, if you've not done, we've talked about this on previous podcasts as well. If you haven't done something like this before, I know when I did a few Kieler marathon run bike runs, and I got the easy last leg, and it was the first time I'd ever did any sort of competition like that. My mate Stu on a bike was phenomenal. Andy, my mate, like ran the Great North running and flipping. He came 99th or something one year and stuff, and he's me at the end. But the one thing that I struggled with the last 8 miles was my breathing, because I think it got to us, like the occasion, and not knowing, I suppose, your first one like that. And just not come. I mean, we came fourth, but I put that down to the other two guys and not me.
Right, it was. I couldn't wait for the next one. Like I couldn't wait, and it was just all the worry beforehand was worth that feeling of crossing the finish line. And I still, like now, I'm like buzzing now, just thinking about it, and talking about it. And there was that race, the Outlaw, which was the full iron, the first full iron, and then Ironman Lanzarote, where I can remember crossing finish lines with that same feeling. Let's
just put this in context, right? Because not everyone knows what a full Ironman is. Tell us what a full Ironman is.
2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and then you run a marathon, one after the other.
In a certain time, you have to, don't you?
You've got 17 hours to complete. I did the first one in 12:50. I did Ironman Lanzarote 14 hours 50. That was hilly, windy and hot. And then I did the Lakesman in 13 hours something. I tried the Lakesman the year before the Lakesman. My bike went wrong and I had a complete meltdown with that. But I landed the first iron I did was Outlaw in Nottingham. And I trained like so hard for that. Like I got myself in as peak condition up to that point as I'd ever been in. And I was starting to rock it. Like it was about a week before, and he goes, "Are you all ready?" I goes, I've got a really good block of training done, and I'm just looking for it. I'm nervous as hell. Like he goes, "Just gone." And everybody said the same thing. Just get everything prepared. You've done your training. Get all your preparation, like your nutrition and stuff, and so just go and enjoy the day. And as I was going right, and he actually said, "But he cried at the end." And at first I was like, "Nah, I'm going to be like, yes, if I cross the finish line." But I remember crossing the finish line. I remember like I did it, and I raised money for Huntington's disease. Excuse me. And I got like halfway around the run. You do one loop, and it's pretty much two laps of the same course. And I was heading out onto the second course, and it's along the river past the Nottingham Forest football ground in Nottingham. And you go along the river, and then you come back in the water sports centre and everything. And I was heading out on the second loop, and I was having serious, like, I'm done here. Like, I cannot do anymore. And I was thinking, like, I reckon I've done enough. If I pack in now, it'll be all right. But then I always had this psychological trick. I'd read up on Huntington's disease, and I'd watched YouTube stuff about Huntington's disease, and I always thought, if I get to that point in my race, think about people who are living every day with Huntington's disease, and all you have to do is just plod on for another few hours. And that's what got us through, because my legs were just screaming. And I just thought, look, I can do this, I can run it. And I got round, and when I crossed the finish line, they put the medal on. I remember like a little moment of like just seemingly being on my own. I just burst into tears. Because again, that build up to something like that was so great. But then burst into tears, then went and had a massage, and I was buzzing for months after that race. And again, like the atmosphere on race day, especially the bigger races where everybody's in the same boat of like, shit, this is a big thing. It's like I'm addicted to it, I would say. Like it's such a good feel. And then at the end, when everyone's got their medals and everyone's like just complete strangers on the run as well, on the runs where you're running, or on the bike ride as well, you might be riding near somebody. You kind of have a bit crap, especially on the run, because you can be running with somebody for mile after mile after mile. And I got to know like 3 or 4 people on that run and crack away from, because you're just plodding along, like the part of the race I was on, is just plodding along, getting through. And it's that kind of, again, the community feeling of the sport that I do, that helped build the passion that's inside us for it. So we're getting through all this, like taking them steps of like joining a tri club, joining in with training, doing races, all built me confidence and just carried on building me confidence. And then became a coach at Sun City Tri Club, and they paid us through me coaching badges. Still there now, still get back to coaching soon with them. And then where NXY came from, which is the company that I run for coaching and events, I held Louise at Fausto had an idea of putting on a little race, just down Broker, as part of like she just had the idea. I was talking about Sun City triathlon, and she mentioned it, and then I mentioned it to some people at the club, and they says, well, get in touch with British Triathlon, because they have got this thing called Go Tri. So if you're going to arrange a race, they'll send you like loads of stuff to help you with the race. So I got in touch with British Triathlon, and they says, oh, you can become a race organiser for us. So the first race we did was, I hadn't quite realised how much organising goes into organising a triathlon, like risk assessments, local authority, police, getting people to actually sign up to the race and setting things up. It was a lot of work. I think if somebody had said to us, do you want to organise a race? And I'd said yes, and it says, by the way, you'll have to do all this, I would have went, oh no, it doesn't matter. I honestly, hand on heart, would have said, no, I've got enough on me to play it. Like, but once I'd said I was going to do it, and I started talking about it on Facebook and stuff, that's it. Like, you've got to follow through. But organising that race, in the morning of that race, where you had people in the water who were very new, because these Go Tries are for like absolute beginners. Even people who've done no training could turn up, and they've turned up and done the races. I was more nervous for that than any race I've ever done, because it wasn't me. It wasn't me doing the race, but it was my name on the risk assessment and the organising and everything. And I started thinking, like, if anything goes wrong here.
I'm just going back, just thinking there from, because does this kind of go back a little bit to your experience that you had at Royal Mail and Parcel Force, where you've kind of like, you've got experience of organising things and you're pulling things together, so it's going through different stages of life where you've learned from that. You've then carried those skills on that you've learned managing people as well, facilitating things across to organising triathlon.
I think it just gave us the confidence of like being front and centre on something, of like being the person that's going to have, like, if somebody rings up, is this how do I enter? Yeah, this is how you enter. Or being the person whose name is on the organising, the contact and everything, and actually, I guess, like leading that, something like that, and being the face of it. 10 years before, not in a million years would I have done it. I would not have wanted to do that. I wouldn't have had the confidence to do it. I wouldn't have had the life skills. I wouldn't have had the skills to do it. So yeah, I think being able to be up front and be like I guess like a lead person or a leader, or so to speak, or somebody who is in a position that other people are looking towards, then and taking on the responsibility of setting up a race where theoretically something could go wrong that you might have to deal with. It did build up my confidence to do that. Yeah, and it built up my confidence then. Like after that race, when it was all done, and it was when the last person got out the water actually, and I thought, right, that's the most dangerous part. That's done. I was like, I start to relax. Then the last person came on off the bike, and I thought, once they start running, if they trip over, that's their fault, because they're out on the bike on open roads, so there's cars on the roads and everything. So that was a bit of a worry. But once they started running, I was like, oh, thank God for that. And then at the end of it, I was talking to Louise again, and she says, like, did you enjoy it? And I was like, for everything I had to do, and she pulled us out of shit a couple of times in I'd forgot to buy water the day before. I was like, shit. So I messaged her, she was like, don't worry, I'll go and get it. So she went and sorted that out. And at the end of it, I was like, I'm buzzing, like that was worth everything. She was like, and then she just said, like, it was a totally throwaway comment. She was like, well, why don't you make it your business? I was like, And then it, like at that moment, it just didn't really sink in, and then like went off, and then everything else, and I just sort of sat back, and I was like, oh, that went really well. But like the next few days, it was like, I wonder if I could like make that a business, like putting on events and things like that. And that's where it came from. So I set it up, and then brought in the coaching came after setting up, because at first it was just going to be putting races on, but then it became, when I started coaching, I was thinking, well, I can coach as well as part of NXY, so I'll do that. I mean, it's been a really, really slow burn. Like, it's been like 5 years, and it was only the summer just gone that I started charging for me coaching. I basically put free sessions on for like a few years, because I was always talking about confidence, and I love putting the free sessions on, but more and more people were saying, like, you should be charging for this.
It's a value of things, though, isn't it?
Well, to me, it made us feel a little bit nervous of like charging people, because I'd done it so long, and the stuff, like it was open water sessions that I charged people for, and I'd done open water sessions for free, and I kind of had that slight worry of like, hang on, he's suddenly charging for stuff that he's done for free before. But the people who had coached for free, almost all the people that came on the paid for course are people who got free coaching as well. A couple of other people, like random people, had signed up as well, which really made us feel good as well about, like, it settled us down anyway about charging people for coaching.
But if you think about it, it's no different to going to the gym. You know, we both go to the gym, you know, you pay for your sessions there. And but like you say, when you've probably done it to start with, to build things up, and then you're taking that leap of faith, but you're offering some value here, because, you know, to train for a triathlon, most people, I suppose, just go out and I'll go for a run, go for a swim, because I'm a breaststroker, so I wouldn't know. It's kind of learning the value of myself and what that value is, and even like the sessions, when I put the sessions on and I put the pricing out there, like, and a couple of people like, have you looked around at how much open water swim sessions are? And I can't, to be honest, I have, and I don't feel like I haven't got the experience of actually coaching open water paid for that I think would warrant. And at the minute, I'm happy to do them a little bit cheaper. I'm quite happy to do that and get that experience. But it was like literally about 25% of the general cost of an open water swim session. But again, I was happy to do that to get the experience and get people in. And it was good. It felt good. It felt good. It felt good to see the money coming in as well. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, it felt good, like, for people paying for the service that I provided, which is then hopefully going to develop that over the next kind of year or two. But again, a little bit like if someone had told us how much effort goes into organising races, if they'd said
like when I set up NXY, someone says it's going to be nearly 5 years before you're charging for your coaching. I either would have said, no, it's not, or I would have went, oh, that's going to be too long. But all that slow build has really helped us, actually, because I've learned to coach people, I've learned to deal with people, I've learned to deal with people at different levels of ability. Maybe not the very high end ability, well, definitely not the high end ability, but certainly where my passion lies is getting people into the sport and then developing beginners in the sport as well. Because I know it wasn't that long ago since I was there, and that's what I like doing. I love seeing people who've come to my sessions at the start sign up to a race and finish the race, and watching people finish the Go Try races. Actually, I love seeing people crossing the finish line who not so long ago wouldn't have even thought of doing a triathlon, because then a lot of people who signed up with them again, oh, it's only a Go Try. Again, you're doing a triathlon. It's a swim, bike, run. It's not only a Go Try. If you've never done something like that before, that's your Ironman, basically. That's to what Ironman was to me, like taking that step up. And to go back to confidence as well, like seeing people cross the finish line and that confidence growing in them gives me such a buzz. Like I love it. And then developing them in the sport, and then starting them off, and then watching them go off and spend £10,000 on a bike and stuff like that. Go on.
It's interesting, when you talk about the confidence, it kind of, we talk about what does confidence mean to you, etc., and the journey you go on. But I think it's a lifelong journey, and it's obviously in different contexts. So you're talking about what you charge, etc. But part of that is the journey that you're on, building the confidence in that particular context, aren't you? And you could jump into pricing something really uncomfortable for you, or you could do what you're doing, which is kind of building up your inner sense of confidence and belief. And it's all the experience of it, isn't it? And we grow confidence through doing and building on it. And it's brilliant. It sounds like the community bit has been a key part. One of the things that I was thinking there is for me, the sign of a good sports club, sport type is, does it have that sense of inclusive community where you're just welcomed, where people clap you in because you're the last one? And I think that to me speaks volumes, because there are some, I've been to the odd club here and there where it's been elitist and you feel like you're a bit out there and left out, you're not fast enough, whatever. But when you are included, it just transforms you, doesn't it? And, and it's, as you say, it's been yours year zero.
When I started, if it had been elitist, I would have been out of there in 5 minutes.
Exactly.
It's not for me. Like, that's even, the only times I've seen any people being elitist with each other are the elites of the club being elitist against the other, that level of competition and that kind of I want to beat you. And like me personally, the more I progressed in the sport, the more I would look at the other people who were on my level and think in the races, some of them, if I can keep near you, I'm going to try and keep near you, and that's, or if I can beat you, that's going to make me feel great. Not that I would then, if I beat someone who I consider a little bit higher than us, I wouldn't then turn around and go, I've stuffed you, I beat you, and stuff like that. But that level of, so that kind of feeling of competition is generally, all my experience of it, or witness of it, is between people who are already elite. Never have I experienced or seen somebody high up in a club or in triathlon talking down about somebody who was just starting. And quite the opposite, actually.
That's the healthy sign, because competition's competition. It's a great thing. We can all have our competition with ourselves, and perhaps somebody's at a similar level, but it's your approach and attitude. And as you say, it's transformed and built your confidence.
Totally changed my life.
So how does the Iceguys fit in? Because it sounds to me that's been, obviously it's come out of that. Is that you kind of continuing this journey of giving something back or support? What's that about?
I've kind of, I guess through the union stuff and then through triathlon, I kind of grew a sense of, I don't know if altruism's the word, or certainly wanting to give back. Paid forward's a really good phrase that I've learned over the last few years, where I think it was a guy called John Joseph, who's an American punk singer who's in recovery, does Ironman and stuff, and he was the first person I heard saying it on a podcast, where he'd recovered from drug abuse, and he said to the people who'd helped him, how can I pay you back? And then people had said, well, you don't we're all right, we don't need you to pay us back. But if you then come across somebody who's in a similar situation, just help them people, and that pays it forward rather than trying to pay back the people. If someone's helped you, they're probably in a decent position in life or a decent place in life. So I've always like lived by that a little bit, like how can I pay it forward? Someone's encouraged me, how can I encourage somebody else? And someone's helped me, how can I help somebody else? So the sense of, and I always use the word community, so whether it's in triathlon or in trade unionism, or whether it's in just where I used to work, like Parcel Force, or recently Swim City, and then just recently going into teaching assistant work in special education needs, I've immediately found like senses of community, and that's why I like being amongst that. So where Iceguys came from was the open water swimming originally. So triathletes tend to be very summer swimmers. So we'd swim between end of April, which was still a bit chilly in our wetsuits, and then end like mid-September towards the end of September, or however long the good weather lasts, and then stop until the next April time, May time. But my friend Kevin Petrie, who's a professor of art. I'm moving these circles, you see. At Sunderland University, he would swim with us. Wasn't a triathlete, but still let him swim with us. And he said he'd found a squad called the Roker Bathing Club, who got together at the time, or still get together now, on a Sunday morning down Roker. And he was like, because I was talking to him, I was like, oh, it's a shame to be ending it, like, because I really love like the open water swimming. And then he mentioned them, so we went down there. And we were there in our wetsuits, and they were there in like, it was only like a small group, but they had just had some bathing costumes on and swimming trunks, and we were just like,
oh, they're mad.
So we got in, we had a little swim, and they were bobbing about and doing their thing. We couldn't believe it. Like, so for a couple of Sundays, we were like, nah, there's no chance. But then Kevin once says, like, next week shall we try without our wetsuits? And I was like, yeah, all right. But in my head, I was just like, no, we shouldn't. Why have you suggested that, Kevin? Just a terrible idea. But all week we were like messaging each other, like Sunday morning, no wetsuits, like right. We got in, and I swear to God, like the difference was, I was just like, oh, I didn't like this. Like, that's never changed, by the way. I know I run Iceguys, but like I was joking about it on Sunday morning with the lads, and I get in there, I'm like, oh God. I'm buzzing after, but when I'm getting in, I'm like, people think because I run Iceguys, I must love being in the cold water and that. No, I didn't like it at all. But the buzz I get from it is great. And we got in and we did it. It's a completely different feeling. But we're bobbing about and we're just looking at each other like, oh, when can we get out? Like, we're just waiting for the first person to get out. And that was like start of October, when it's relatively warm water. So we started going down there and getting in through the winter. And then my friend Hayley, she set up Wild Sea Women, and that was like a group just for women to do the sea swimming. Like that's when like Wim Hof started to get like popular, and the breath work and the cold water therapy thing for mental health started to get a little bit more known. And some of the women who went to Wild Sea Women are asking, is there a male equivalent? And at the time, well, there wasn't in Sunderland anyway. So Hayley suggested to me, well, why do you want to set up a men's group? And again, I guess going back to confidence, like I didn't even think twice really. I just thought, let's get that going. And so everything up to that point, again, therapy, trade unions, triathlon, and then setting up NXY and doing the races, gave us that confidence where it wasn't a case of, was that going to be hard, or maybe some people won't come, or that was just a case of, let's give it a go. So set it up, got them, both groups were going for a couple of years, maybe a year actually, and then somebody suggested to Hayley about becoming a community interest company, which then you can apply for funding to build on whatever you're doing. Both of them set up that, so set up Iceguys as a community interest company. That's been difficult, mind, like, because NXY, I would just always just go at my own pace, and then the money coming in wasn't massive, and so it was easy enough to get the tax returns done, and thinking about running a business wasn't my sole source of income. NXY, and I mean neither's Iceguys, but Iceguys is to compare the two, like NXY's quite low level down here, and Iceguys has really built up into something that needs to be run properly. And so having the confidence to do that, and we set the group up anyway, and it just built from there really. And like we had 9 lads come down the first Sunday that we did it. Next week there was like 10 lads. Next week I think numbers dropped a little bit, but it was always the case where we did this anyway, so we'll just come down and keep going. And then within about 8 or 9 weeks, I think like our 8th or 9th week, there was like 46 blokes turned up. And that's still like the most we've had like in one go, like 46 blokes. And it was like, whoa, this is getting a bit mad, this. And I know Wild Sea Women at the time were pulling like 150 women were going, and it was like, whoa. And I was getting a bit like, I wouldn't want 150 people to turn up. Like, so it's never been a case of like having that bulletproof confidence. There was a little bit of it, like, oh, this is difficult to manage. Like it's going to take a little bit of concentration and everything else. So, but we kept going, and then got a group in Tyneside. Then there's one in call them therapeutic workshops, because one, people have come, and whether it's the reason it's on the program's like a year and a half at the minute, it's because there's so many different areas or facets of mental health that's a lot more complicated. So we're gonna so it might be gambling addiction, it might be drug addiction, might be drinking, might be domestic violence, just any area where men can experience or know of somebody who's experiencing mental health issues. We want people to come and either get signposted to where the professional help is, or like learn about themselves and learn how to possibly help themselves a little bit, or at least take the step to then go away and get the help that they might need at that time.
Well, we were just talking about this on another podcast there before, because I think that's one of the hardest things. Dave asked me the question, what would you recommend for guys who are struggling? You know, what's the, and I was like, well, it's a tricky one, really, because like when I first started, I started listening to podcasts, you know, and it's finding like the right people to give you the right advice. So it's that first step for guys where they're probably, and like I know I did for years, like I had, you know, a bit of one-to-one counselling, but like, where do you start? Well, those things that you mentioned before, gambling, drug addiction, alcohol, domestic abuse. Like, I know you can Google search these things, but you know, where's it going to send you? You know, so to have that within the group is just phenomenal.
On that note, because is it kind of like, I'm thinking of like ways into access. Is it like I can kind of see how the ice dipping, you know, can be a way into that as well. Do you know what I mean? Because it's very big at the moment, and for good reason. But I might go along to that. And then you have conversations, and then you've got these other things going on. It feels like that's a way in, because one of the things we were talking about is that where do you get started? And I know you were saying earlier on in the podcast that, you know, how you get started is just say something. But sometimes you need a vehicle to get you there sometimes, you know?
Yeah, I mean, even that, like, just ask for help. Like, and I know nowadays, I mean, we're discussing it now, there's so much information out there, and it's kind of become a thing where people say, oh, it's more open for men to discuss mental health. But even just a couple of days ago, the suicide rate in the UK is sky high. And who's unfortunately at the top, or maybe the bottom of the list, it's the northeast of England. They've got the highest suicide rate in the UK. Yeah. And men are far more likely to commit suicide than women. So even though it's become more acceptable to discuss mental health, I'll discuss my mental health. I'm happy to discuss my mental health. There's still, the majority of people, men, will not in a million years discuss their mental health. So part of the good thing about Iceguys being a slow build over the last 3 years, and we haven't touched on anything like I won't be delivering the sessions. We're going to be getting professionals to deliver the sessions. But the fact that we've built up now, certainly a lot of lads who come to the sessions, or at least follow us on social media, to know that we're a little bit established. We mean what we're doing. Our motives are wanting to help people, wanting to help men with their mental health. I think that makes it more likely for men to come along and think like, and trust Iceguys' name, so to speak, to come along, that we're doing it for the right reasons. I'm not going to be charging people for these things, and that's where the funding comes in handy. Or lads who come to our sessions regularly, I can say to them, this is what we're doing, and I know some of them lads will come along. Yeah. The other thing that we're doing, which is something that's still really quiet, is men's sexual health and sexual problems that men might have, whether that's sexual performance or any issues that they might have around their sexuality, or something like that they know of, that maybe their children's sexuality. Like, I don't have children myself, but I'm in my 40s, and so the majority of people are in the same age range. They'll have sons or daughters coming up to an age where they're starting to think about their own sexuality and move then. If we can give lads a few tools so they can deal with that, say like if somebody's son says that they're trans or they're gay or something like that, there'll still be loads of men, especially in the northeast, who will just not know how to deal with it, and it could end up being like a really difficult situation in their family. They could deal with it in a way that says you're not, or they'll react badly. If we can give a little bit of education on that, then that'll hopefully help them deal with things that come up. Or it might be their own sexuality, or it might be something that they're going through. But certainly when I was talking to my friend who's going to hopefully deliver that session, she's a sexual sex therapist, she was saying like, and that resonated with me, because even now when she was talking about it, if there's one thing that I probably wouldn't want to discuss publicly, is like sexual health, or certainly sexual performance is an area where men won't want to discuss whether it's well, I guess it's like whether it's good sexual performance. I'm sure many men will talk about that, the blow in the face, but maybe sometimes when you're struggling with sexual performance, and that's the kind of thing where the therapeutic workshop might be an education on it. It'll not be, come along and tell us when you couldn't get an hard on. Do you know what I mean? Because no one's going to sit and go, yeah, there was this time when I couldn't get it up or something like that. But if we can discuss that and say, these are sometimes the reasons why, and I think the majority of the reasons why will be stress rather than something physical.
I think also as well, like again, we were talking before about, it's like that first walking through the door. Ultimately, like with Iceguys, it's that first turning up on the beach and jumping in the sea with a load of other blokes. You know, that's a big step. That's like, I remember when I went, I mean, I'm flipping, I'd just come back from holiday, I was really tanned and stuff like that, but I was nervous as hell. Like, it's like walking it, like I compare it like walking in a group therapy, but like once you're there, then you realise, but then to get that help and support and signpost, and when you're in there as well, is, I mean, it's phenomenal, because I think you can loosen up very quickly around guys who are in the swimmies in the sea and talking and stuff like that.
Some of the messages that we've had from like people, a lot of people who have come new have like messaged through social media first, and a couple of the messages we've had, or a lot of the messages actually that we've had, is like what do people wear? And it's like, well, you can wear a wetsuit, you can wear a t-shirt, and wear whatever. And a couple of people have asked like, is like everybody like thin? And I'm like, well, no,
body confidence,
shapes and sizes. There's lads who are big lads. There's lads who are small lads. There's skinny lads, and because sometimes it's not always being fat that's the problem. It's being skinny that's the problem. Anybody that, like, to a lesser extent, possibly, but it's still a issue for men. Like body image, like, because it's like a classic thing that women all want to like, or are expected to look to a certain beauty standard. But with the explosion of fitness influencers and Instagram and everything you can do on Instagram and filters and stuff like that, it's men as well. And a lot of men think if they don't look like the ripped or the shredded or the muscly or the big or whatever, then they don't want to take their top off. They don't want to. You're standing on a beach, like exposed, because there's already people, especially through winter, if people are walking past, they're looking out and think, what the hell are they doing? So everyone's staring and think, like, there's a group of blokes taking their clothes off, are they getting in the sea? So there's that, and it's like, you're in public, we're not doing it in private, so some lads will be a little bit fearful, but I'm pleased to say that like lads I've reassured, there's all shapes and sizes. Just look at our Instagram, there's no like, we don't promote like everyone like flexing and stuff like that. Like, it's not that. That's not what we do. We're about like what's up there, and if we can make people comfortable about coming and maybe making the start with the mental health and that dip, we always make people welcome. Like, make a thing of like people coming new. There's been a couple of times when people have been walking over really slowly. They've got their bag for life with their swimming stuff. Never messaged anything. They've just saw what time we meet and turned up. They're like walking over slowly, and you spot them. I can't say, "If Iceguys, come out, what's your name? Have you found us?" and stuff like that. And then the lads will ask you the correct. Not just me either. I'm like, I might run it, but I'm happy that I can step back from that. And there's loads of lads who will be like, "Oh wait, I'm getting here. This is where I get changed and stuff. Where are you from? What would you do? What do you work?" And hopefully within seconds, they've forgot about the fact that they're a little bit overweight or a little bit underweight.
I can only speak from my experience of like, once you take your first toe into the sea, everything, you forget about anything. Like, it is making that first, you know, you forget about your shape, your size, why you're there. If you're having a bad day, what it just flipping goes like, and then it's fun.
That's the kind of thing about cold water therapy, and it's your survival instinct kicks in, and when your survival instinct kicks in, whatever you've got going on, it isn't in your mind because you're so fucking cold. You're not thinking like, oh God, I'm into my overdraft, or I'm having problems like with my partner, or this is going on, that's going on, whatever it is, isn't on your mind for a few minutes, and just getting that little bit clearance from it, whether it's half an hour of being amongst the group the lads are like taking the piss out of each other like lads do and stuff like that, but just the ones who know each other by the way, like if someone new comes up and then start picking on their haircut, or if it's me walking up and someone taking the piss out of my man bun and stuff like that, but it's very much like just it's a safe space for men to like be whoever they want to be, and I hope that if there's anybody who thinks Iceguys is like a macho environment and things like that, it's really not. It's just a safe space for men to come, join in. You can come and be quiet. We've got a couple of lads who come down. They'll say, all right. They'll barely say another word. They'll get in. They'll have their dip. They'll get out. Have a cuppa. Be on the fringes. Listen. Maybe join in a little bit with a crack and chat. And then they'll go. And that's all they do. They'll come. They'll not go into anything. One of the lads where it was like he's dead quiet. I don't want to name names right like that, but he's dead quiet. He comes. He looks. We think he might have been in like special forces, like cause he's got the look of a bloke. You know, in like action films where they just twist someone's neck like that. He could do that with one hand. He's just got that look. And we're setting up chess club, and I was like, "Oh, do you fancy coming to chess club?" And he just went, "No." That was it. I immediately just went, all right, I'm not going to ask again. But like, and other lads will come, some lads will come down and be like the life and soul and everything else. But it's just a safe space for blokes to come, get in the water, and then if they follow us on Instagram or Facebook, they'll know the other stuff that we're putting on. And just come down and just get away from whatever else they've got.
So tell us, it's important this as well. So what would everybody search for on socials to find?
Literally Iceguys. There's not. I mean, worldwide there's a couple of other like there's an ice cream firm and stuff like that. But if you look for Iceguys say ice.
You'll see the nakedness going on.
You'll see us. You'll find us.
That's awesome. Just you talk about that community. It's a similar thing in the other sports areas. You're kind of recreating that, and I think that's really important, isn't it? That you're doing that. And I think just because we're conscious of time now, that we're going to have to probably wrap things up. But I think getting that message across, the benefits, it could be a gateway into it for mental health, or just join for a bit of camaraderie, friendship, or the dipping. It just sounds absolutely awesome. Yeah. So one of the things we do obviously want to finish with traditionally is our question about an object. So we've covered loads of ground here, but we finish with this question, which is there an object or something from your past that is meaningful to you, brings back a sense of joy, or just something that means something to you when you think about it?
Yeah, there was I guess 4, but I've only got one with us because I forgot to bring them. The other ones did have them out, but I forgot to bring them. I guess I'll start with the one that I've actually got here. So probably, literally about this time last year, I met my current partner. Hopefully I'll be with her a long time yet. And she gave us that, so it's just a little keepsake that I've got on as a keyring.
It's a heart for listeners.
It's a heart, and it had Luxembourg written on because she's from Romford, which is lived a lot of her life in Luxembourg. So she's a family live in Luxembourg. So there's that. Being with her gives us a lot of confidence. She's beautiful. She's funny. She's very, very clever. She's a psychologist, so I have to watch what I say around her. I remember when I met her, and it was like she actually came to one of the running sessions that I put on, and there was her and another lass actually turned up first time on the same day. So introduced ourselves, and we'd known each other for about 3 months before we actually got together, built up the confidence to ask her out. And we were jogging along, and I was like, oh, this is Sarah. And Nikki was the other lass. So we're running along, we've done the pleasantries. Right, let's get started. And I was chatting, and she was like, I said, oh, so what do you do then, Sarah? She went, oh, I'm a psychologist. And I was like, Jesus Christ. I was like, right, watch out, everybody. She's a psychologist. Don't tell her anything. Gladly, I've never caught her making notes when I'm talking. She's probably just keeping it all up there. The other things, one was the trophy that I got for Participation Coach of the Year in 2022. So that was a national award from Triathlon England. So I got nominated, won the regional award, and then went on to the nationals and won the national award as well. So what Participation Coach is, getting people into the sport of triathlon and then developing them at the start. getting recognition from that. Somebody told us they were nominating us, and that was good enough. I was thought, that's really kind, and that's amazing, and I'm so proud. And then they announced the regional award, and I'd won that, and I was absolutely buzzing. And then the national award was, unfortunately, because of COVID restrictions at the time, they weren't getting together and getting everyone together, because you'd go to like a national big sort of hall and go up on stage. But they announced it online, so I was just sat at home on my laptop watching it stream by myself. And then they announced, I was like, here we go. Loads of other people like sort of messages, hey, he's the participation coach. And then they announced my name, and I started crying actually. I was that like emotional that like, Christ, I've actually won that national award. So they sent a really nice trophy. So when I look at that, I think you're doing something right here. And as much as I'd like to pretend, it's not about the awards, I really liked getting that award. The other one would be me Ironman Lanzarote medal, because of what I went through on that day, and to get through that particular Ironman was pretty tough. So I look at that. The other one was a good luck card from my parents in the lead up to, I can't remember, it was either Outlaw or Ironman Lanzarote, but it was just a little message saying like, we're proud of you. It's probably Outlaw because of the Huntington's disease. Just saying, we're proud of what you do. And so these little things, recognition, I guess, for being myself, is what, like, I look at them and I read the card or I like have this on my key ring, and it gives us confidence that I'm at least doing something right to some people, and then that keeps us going. So those are the objects. It was difficult. I had the 4 of them, and I was like, right, which one would I pick? And I'm like, right, I better pick that one. but then I was just like, I'll pick 4, and then hope that's all right to pick 4, because I couldn't pick between them.
And clearly, you're doing more than just some things right. And I think the journey that you've been on, and thanks for sharing it, because we've covered loads, but there's been loads of insights. There's lots of things I think people can relate to, lots of takeaways, and inspirational. So thank you very much. It's been great having you on. I
think a final message, if I'm allowed, is like, and this is something we've been discussing like recently amongst the lads, like, and one person in particular, it's like, it's all right to like screw up, and it's all right to like, you don't have to be like perfect. And even when it comes to like running Iceguys and NXY, and where the, like, particularly Iceguys, where it looks like, that's pretty good. Like I've screwed up a few things, like, but I've learned from them, and I get confidence from screwing things up and either rectifying them or at least thinking, like, don't do that again. There's another way to do it. Yeah. And also lean on other people. Don't think that you have to be the man. You know, there's a lot of other people help with Iceguys, like the committee and everything else, and get other people around you who'll help you, and that'll give you confidence as well.
Love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Chris. Cheers. I hope that you enjoyed the episodes and got something from that. If you did, we would love you to share our podcast.
And if you're not already, subscribe to the show and leave us a rating and a review. That really helps spread the word.
We'd also like to thank our podcast producer, Bernardo, for doing a sensational job.
And thanks to the awesome Logan Nicholson of musicformakers.com for the music for the podcast. Catch you in the next episode.
Thanks, guys.